April 14, 1944, 0500 hours. A thin mist clung to the forested edges of Normandy. The air smelled of damp earth, gunpowder from distant skirmishes, and the faint copper tang of early morning frost. You can almost feel the cold biting at the ears and fingers of the soldiers crouched silently among the underbrush. The Germans had no idea what awaited them, and yet, even here, tension hummed like electricity through the ranks. Private Klaus Kleiner adjusted his helmet strap and checked his rifle one last time. He was barely 19, his face still carrying the softness of youth, but his eyes sharp, calculating, betrayed a maturity the battlefield had forced upon him. Around him, his comrades muttered, some nervously chuckling at the stupid plan he had proposed the night before. A grenade trap, they scoffed, dangerous, reckless. But Klaus had spent hours studying the enemy patrol patterns, memorizing every step, every predictable pause in their march. The mist shifted with the morning breeze, curling around tree trunks like ghostly fingers. Somewhere ahead, faint voices in German floated across the clearing. 23 soldiers moving in formation, confident, unaware. They laughed, the sound carrying lightly through the fog, unaware that their laughter would soon be drowned by the chaos Klaus was about to unleash. He gripped the grenade tightly, feeling its cold steel against his palms. This wasn't about brute force or heroics. This was about precision, timing, patience. Every step he had taken the night before had been calculated, every observation recorded in his mind. Yet doubt lingered in the whispers of his fellow soldiers. "It's a stupid plan," one muttered, shaking his head. "You'll get yourself killed before it even begins." Klaus didn't reply. Words would have ruined his focus. The first German soldier appeared, boots crunching softly against frost-hardened earth. Klaus's heartbeat quickened. He slid forward, hands trembling slightly, positioning the grenade at the base of a narrow choke point in the underbrush. The enemy formation moved in almost cinematic slow motion, their confidence, their downfall. You can almost feel the tension in the air, the way every leaf, every twig seems to hold its breath along with him. He glanced back at his comrades. Their eyes widened as they saw him kneeling there, seemingly calm, utterly intent on something they couldn't yet understand. Some laughed nervously, others simply stared. What could possibly come of a single stupid grenade in such an enormous operation? But Klaus knew. He had visualized this exact moment, over and over. He had seen the outcome in his mind's eye long before reality would confirm it. The enemy was close now. The mist swirled, and with it the sound of their boots became muffled and ominous. Time seemed to stretch. A single misstep, a single premature movement. It would all be over before it had even begun. Yet he remained focused, drawing every ounce of calm into his posture. He could almost hear the faint rhythm of their march syncing with the pounding of his own heart. And then, as the first German soldier stepped into the trap, a silence fell across the clearing. Not absolute silence. There was still the distant clamor of war, but a charged, electric stillness, as if the entire forest had paused in anticipation. Klaus's hand hovered over the grenade, ready to act. The world held its breath. A faint crack of twig underfoot, a sharp exhale. Then the moment of truth approached. 1 second, 2, and in that small fraction of time, Klaus felt the weight of every eye on him. Every soldier, every leaf trembling in the breeze, everything depended on this. The first explosion would either write his name into the annals of survival, or it would erase him from memory entirely. Klaus exhaled slowly, his fingers tightening around the grenade's cold metal. The first German soldier's boots were now just inches from the trap, the narrow choke point constricting his path like a living vice. You can almost hear the muffled heartbeat of the forest. Every twig, every rustle of leaves amplified by the anticipation. It was as if the world itself waited for what was about to happen. Then he did it. A flick of the wrist, the release of the pin, a slight drop and a calculated roll. The grenade landed perfectly in the center of the narrow path, hidden beneath a scattering of leaves and earth. It was so precise that even the mocking voices from his comrades fell silent. They could only watch, holding their breath along with him. For a brief suspended moment, nothing happened. The Germans continued forward, unaware that every step carried them closer to disaster. 23 soldiers, moving in a line, their confidence almost palpable, unaware of the unseen danger beneath their boots. Every second stretched taut with suspense, each footstep counting down toward inevitability. And then the explosion. A deafening roar shattered the quiet mist. Dirt, wood, and debris erupted into the air, propelled by the force of the detonation. Smoke poured from the ground in thick, choking clouds, obscuring the view of chaos unfolding. The first German soldier was thrown violently backward, his eyes wide with shock, mouth open in a scream cut short by sudden darkness. The second, third, and all that followed were caught in the blast's relentless path, collapsing like dominoes, their formation obliterated in mere seconds. Klaus felt the recoil through his entire body, the ground trembling beneath him. He ducked instinctively, smoke curling around his knees, sharp acrid scents filling his nose. When the dust began to settle, silence fell once more, but it was a different silence now, the kind that presses down on the chest, heavy with disbelief. 23 enemy soldiers lay scattered across the narrow path, motionless. A single act, executed flawlessly, had shifted the balance of the battlefield in mere moments. He rose cautiously, peering through the lingering smoke. Some of his comrades moved forward, stunned, faces pale. Others whispered hurriedly to one another, their eyes never leaving the aftermath. He did it, someone muttered. 23 in seconds. No one had expected such precision. No one had believed the trap could succeed. Yet there it was, a perfect storm of strategy, courage, and luck. The enemy, or what remained of them, had no time to react. Confusion and terror rippled through the survivors who had not yet reached the blast zone. Shouts rang out, frantic, disorganized, as soldiers tried to comprehend the devastation. Their confidence, so evident just moments ago, dissolved in an instant. The laughter that had carried lightly through the mist was replaced by horrified silence. Klaus's own heart pounded, not with fear, but with the acute awareness of what he had just accomplished. This wasn't chance. This wasn't luck. This was the result of observation, calculation, and nerve. He had watched, waited, and acted with precision. And now, all the ridicule, all the doubts of his comrades, had been swept away by the undeniable proof of his plan's success. Yet even as the dust settled, Klaus didn't exult. He didn't smile. There was only the forest around him, smoke curling, trees swaying gently, and the faint echo of distant gunfire. The battlefield was a living, breathing entity, and he had just changed its rhythm, but the war was far from over. Every second counted. Every decision could mean life or death. And though the Germans had been taken by surprise, the consequences of one mistake could still ripple back toward him. The mist was thicker now, curling around the fallen soldiers like ghostly fingers. Silence had descended, heavy and suffocating. You could almost hear the distant wind sigh through the trees, carrying with it the remnants of what had just occurred. 23 enemy soldiers lay where they fell, and for the first time the battlefield felt still, but stillness was deceptive. The echo of the explosion lingered in the minds of everyone present, like a memory too vivid to ignore. Klaus moved slowly, cautiously. Each step through the debris-littered path reminded him that life and death hung in fragile balance. His young comrades, who had once laughed at his stupid grenade, now followed him with wide eyes. Some whispered in disbelief, others muttered prayers, and a few simply shook their heads, unable to comprehend what had just happened. Their mocking had vanished, replaced by awe. A single act, executed perfectly, had turned ridicule into reverence. He surveyed the clearing, counting silently in his mind. 23, every life accounted for. The enemy's formation was broken, their confidence shattered. In a matter of seconds, a plan that had seemed foolish had rewritten the rules of engagement. Soldiers who had thought themselves invincible now faced the stark reality that caution, observation, and precision could overcome sheer numbers. Even the surviving Germans scrambled in confusion, their disciplined formation replaced by frantic, disorganized chaos. Shouts rang out as they realized the scope of the damage. Panic replaced confidence. They could not believe that one soldier, with one stupid grenade, had inflicted such devastation. You can almost see it, the terror in their eyes, the hesitation in their movements, the instant realization that this was no ordinary enemy. Around him, Klaus's own unit began to react. Comrades who had doubted him now approached with careful curiosity. Some offered nods of approval, others just stared, speechless. "You did it. Exactly as you said," one soldier finally breathed, the disbelief evident in his voice. The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of astonishment. Every mocking comment, every skeptical glance from the previous night was now buried beneath the undeniable truth of his action. But Klaus didn't allow himself to dwell. He knew the battle was far from over. The enemy's initial shock was just the beginning. Now, the survivors might regroup, might counterattack, and he had to remain vigilant. Every sense remained alert: the faint rustle of movement in the trees, the shifting of shadows, the distant echo of distant gunfire. Each sound was a reminder that the war had not paused for this single victory. He knelt again, checking the remaining grenades and surveying potential escape routes. His mind was a balance of calm and calculation, a dance between fear and focus. Around him, the battlefield seemed to watch, suspended in anticipation. The young soldier, once mocked, now carried the weight of proof that courage, intelligence, and preparation could triumph where brute force might fail. Even as his peers began to murmur among themselves, replaying the events in their minds, the lesson was clear. This was not luck. This was skill. Every observation, every small action, every patient moment of planning had led to this instant. The laughter of yesterday had been silenced by the precision of his actions today, and yet, as the forest slowly returned to a deceptive calm, attention remained. The enemy was still out there. Survivors would regroup, reinforcements could arrive. Every second held the possibility of further danger. Klaus's heart did not relax. The triumph was real, but so too was the ever-present shadow of uncertainty. Somewhere in the distance, a faint scream broke through the haze, a reminder that the battlefield had no mercy, and that victory in one moment could be followed by peril in the next. The young soldier's courage had earned him temporary reverence, but survival depended on relentless vigilance. In the midst of awe, the real test was only just beginning. Klaus stood quietly, the morning mist curling around him, clinging to his uniform and helmet like a shroud. The battlefield seemed to exhale, the chaos slowly ebbing as the dust settled. He watched his comrades, some still wide-eyed, others murmuring among themselves, repeating over and over the phrase that would linger for decades: "He did it." With a single grenade. This was the moment he had envisioned. Not for glory, not for recognition, but for proof. Proof that intelligence, patience, and courage could change the course of events even in the deadliest circumstances. The laughter that had once echoed around him, the mocking voices that dismissed his plan, had vanished. Every skeptic, every doubter had witnessed the undeniable outcome. 23 enemy soldiers defeated, in 19 seconds, by a trap they called stupid. He thought briefly of the enemy. Faces twisted in shock, fear flashing in their eyes, boots scrambling over fallen comrades. They had underestimated him, underestimated the human mind's power when sharpened by focus and resolve. And in that underestimation lay their downfall. Sometimes, the simplest plan, executed with precision, could be the most devastating. Around him, his fellow soldiers began to take note of the lesson unfolding before their eyes. Courage, he realized, was not about size or strength. It was about observation, about daring to act when others hesitate, about patience and calculation. Every step he had taken, every moment he had studied the enemy, had brought him to this exact instant. He had transformed ridicule into triumph, mockery into respect, and doubt into belief. And yet, the young soldier knew the war was far from over. He had not defeated the enemy entirely. Reinforcements could arrive, counterattacks could strike, and the battlefield remained unforgiving. But for now, he allowed himself a quiet acknowledgement of what he had accomplished. He had proven that even the seemingly insignificant, the mocked, the underestimated, could alter the course of events. As he moved through the clearing, helping his comrades assess the aftermath, he realized that history often remembered the grand, the heroic, the celebrated. But sometimes, it was the quiet acts, the calculated risks, the small decisions, the unseen bravery that truly shifted the tide. One moment, one action, one grenade. That was all it took to carve a story into memory. The lesson resonated beyond the battlefield. Every soldier who had witnessed it, every comrade who had doubted, every enemy forced to reckon with unexpected defeat, carried the understanding that courage could be measured in moments, not size, that intelligence could outmaneuver force, that patience could triumph over chaos. And as the day wore on, Klaus continued forward, vigilant, aware, alive. The forest whispered around him, leaves rustling like the echoes of those fallen in the blast. But in every rustle, in every shadow, there was also proof that bravery, even when mocked, could leave a mark far beyond its immediate consequence. Sometimes, the simplest acts hold the greatest power. Sometimes, the laughter of others is a precursor to respect earned in silence. And sometimes, history remembers not the loudest voices, but the quiet ones who dared to act when no one else would. In the end, the story of the stupid grenade became legend not because of destruction alone, but because it demonstrated what courage, intellect, and resolve could achieve when combined in the crucible of war. A single young soldier, underestimated and mocked, had changed the moment forever. And as the mist slowly lifted, revealing the aftermath in stark clarity, one truth remained: never underestimate the unexpected, never dismiss the seemingly foolish, and never forget that sometimes a single act executed with precision can echo far beyond the battlefield, leaving a legacy no one could ignore.